Another edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast coming at you. Part 3 of today. Actually, part 2 so far. Part 3 is coming up after this, but man. The Baseball Hall of Fame announced that Tim Raines, Jeff Bagwell, and Pudge Rodriguez are the 3 newest members of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. 3 class acts of the sport, 3 of the greatest careers at their respective positions in the sport's history. And baseball is a rich, traditional sport that dates back all the way into the 1800s. So Tim Raines was a guy that was one of the best players, one of the most underrated players that should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. And for whatever reason, we've had this logjam of the Hall of Fame with the steroid scandal and the steroid era being a huge hitch in everybody's giddy-up, so to speak, that did not allow Tim Raines to make the Hall of Fame sooner and did not allow other guys along the way to make the Hall of Fame sooner. Jeff Bagwell, a Houston Astro, a guy that was a pillar of that team for quite some time. And then you have Pudge Rodriguez, one of the greatest catchers in the history of the game, one of the greatest leaders in the history of the game, one of the greatest offensive catchers in the history of baseball. Had a long, lengthy career that was productive. But it begs the question, what about Barry Bonds? What about Roger Clemens? What about Pete Rose? 3 polarizing questions in the sport of baseball. Will Barry Bonds get in the Hall of Fame? Will Roger Clemens get in the Hall of Fame? Will Commissioner Manfred remove the ban, so to speak, on Pete Rose, remove the shackles that are on Pete Rose from being in the Hall of Fame? 3 questions that I am willing to try to tackle and come up with some sort of an answer, come up with a reason as to why they should be in the Hall of Fame. This has always been my opinion, okay? Always. And I am a huge baseball fan. Baseball is a sport that I love to play. It was my favorite game to play. I was the best at baseball of all the sports I played. I could pick up a bat right now, join a team, go 3 for 4, 4 for 4, 4 for 5 if needed, go home and not play for the next 5 to 6 years, and do it all over again. I was naturally gifted at playing baseball. Obviously, I'm not playing baseball now, I'm doing this. But it was my favorite sport to play, and out of all the sports I played, I was the best at baseball. I enjoyed baseball the most. It's in my genetics. My dad was a baseball player. My grandpa was a baseball coach for over 35 years. My Uncle Mike was a great baseball player. He was a baseball coach. My cousins, Bobby and Doug, were great baseball players. Rob was a great baseball player as well. It's been in my family for quite some time. And I hold baseball really, really close to my heart because it was a sport that helped bond my father and I and my grandfather, obviously being the fact that they were both of my baseball coaches. And my grandpa was a manager, well-respected manager in the city of Lockport for quite a long time. And I hold it close. It's a sentimental bond that I have with the sport that'll never, ever end. I'll always watch the Boston Red Sox are my team because of my grandfather, and it helps me keep my grandpa's spirit alive by continuing to follow the game in some weird way, if that makes any sense. But to me, it's like a way of it's like a grieving mechanism watching the game for me. Without getting too emotional, I really love the sport. And there's people along the way that I watched, like the Roger Clemens of the world and the Barry Bonds of the world, that had their day before they decided to take human growth hormone or performance-enhancing drugs. And the fact is, they were not on these substances for the majority of their careers. And even if they were, on top of that, the fact is, baseball did not make these substances illegal until 2003. So the fact is, they did what was within the rules of the sport. Much like in the sport of mixed martial arts, USADA is clamping down on the UFC like white on rice, and there's fighters that are being pinched for testosterone replacement therapy. There's fighters that are being pinched for sleep aid. There's fighters being pinched for Advil. There's fighters being pinched for Viagra. There's a laundry list of substances that you cannot take that are considered to be a performance-enhancing drug in any form or fashion. If they are, and you get caught, you are ripped off the card. Much like baseball, guys that are caught after the 2003 point are suspended for whatever suspension the commissioner decides. If you are not caught before steroids was really illegal, baseball knew that it was a problem, and instead of doing anything about it, they let it continue. They let it get blown completely out of proportion within the sport. They let fighters manipulate it more and more and more, and we saw it come to at a full steam pace when Sammy Sosa went up against Mark McGwire for the home run record. This is common knowledge. I'm not spewing anything that's not already known by most in the sport of baseball. If this is something that has been lost on baseball fans, there's plenty of documentaries on it that are stating what I'm stating now. Baseball knew that steroids was a huge problem. They avoided the problem for the betterment of the ratings of the sport. They knew that these substances were allowing players to get better in a scientific way, and they knew that Barry Bonds' head was growing from a average male's head to 2 basketballs, and they didn't care. So now that it's illegal, now that it's such a stain on the sport, they're preaching the fact that the sport is now finally clean. You got the cookie cutter image of Mike Trout and Bryce Harper and Andrew McCutchen and all these clean-cut guys that are 100% clean players. Now that is the case, the guys like Barry Bonds and the guys like Roger Clemens get put on the back burner because they were 2 of the best players in an era that allowed performance-enhancing drugs. How is that their fault? Why are they being punished for something that was allowed by the sport? Why are they not being recognized as 2 of the best players in the sport's history in circumstances where the sport was letting these players take these drugs? Whether it be steroids to allow, to build muscle, or steroids to keep a player healthy from a baseball season, which actually starts in February, to, at the latest, late October or early November if that team ends up winning the World Series and going 7 games in a World Series. So, I think Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens should be in. I've thought that for a long time. I think Pete Rose should have the ban lifted from him today, right now, if I was in charge. I don't care what a guy decides to do in his spare time. I don't care. I don't care if he bet on games that he managed. I don't care if he bet on games that he played. It doesn't matter to me. Was he or was he not one of the best players that the game has ever seen? Is he or is he not the hits leader in the sport of baseball? What are you taught when you're playing Little League Baseball? What is the key to offense in baseball? Getting the hit. And the guy that is the number 1 hits leader, far and away, the number 1 hits leader is Pete Rose. And he is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. It is ridiculous. It is an embarrassment. It's pathetic. I don't care what he did in his spare time. If he bet $500,000 on his team to lose, knowing that his team would lose, and he made $500,000 on it, I don't care. That's just me. I really don't. Was he or was he not one of the best players? Yes, he was. Did he help the sport of baseball? Of course he did. Of course he did. Hustle. All hustle. Pete Rose. Roger Clemens. Guy that pitched in the major leagues for over 20 years. Boston Red Sox, Toronto Blue Jays, New York Yankees, Houston Astros, then back to the Yankees for a short time. One of the best strikeout pitchers in Major League Baseball history, second, I think, to Nolan Ryan. And he is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds, the home run hits leader. For whatever reasons you might think he should not be, he is. There's no change in it. Those balls went over the wall. He had to watch the ball and connect the bat to the ball and hit it in order for it to go over that fence. The steroids he was taking, I don't think they were helping his eyesight. I don't think they were helping his fast twitch swing reaction. I think they were helping put those balls over the fence. He was getting bigger. He was getting stronger. But he was 40 playing still. Playing in the outfield in the NL. He needed to take the steroids. And they were legal. Again, they were legal. One of the things that frustrates me about A-Rod, too, and I can't stand A-Rod. Everybody knows this. But when A-Rod was taking steroids in Texas, they were legal. After that, they weren't. After that, you can critique that. Before, they were legal. They were allowed. Baseball just started to realize that it was becoming a huge phenomenon within the sport, and they needed to stop it. And Bud Selig was being taken advantage of, and Bud didn't like that too much. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Pete Rose, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, all 5 of those guys I would put in the Hall of Fame. The reason why I wanted to talk about this tonight is because, yes, Tim Raines, Jeff Bagwell, and Pudge Rodriguez did get in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds came in at a 50% voting clip, which is the highest that both of them have had. Maybe these baseball writers, these scrawny little guys, and I'm not making fun of them because they're in positions that I'd love to be in, but maybe these guys are finally starting to come around to the idea that, hey, this was not a big deal. It's really not. I don't consider those guys an embarrassment to the game for electing to take something that would help them play better, electing to take something that would help them stay healthy. The reason why I say that is because most of these guys did take steroids in order to stay healthy for their team. Andy Pettit being one of them. He said, I'm not going to make, consecutive starts if I don't take this stuff. Or if I didn't take this stuff. Jason Giambi had some sort of a weird medical condition where he needed it. It's a case-by-case basis. Not all of these guys are taking this stuff to just jack baseballs 500 feet. Jose Canseco, he was. There's no doubt about that. But that was that era. Baseball should just say, you know what, that was then. It happened. We let it happen. There's nothing we can do about it. We shouldn't punish these guys based on the fact that we, as a sport, let this happen. It's our own fault. Embrace these guys. Immortalize these guys as they should be. And move on. That was my take today. The final take on the Thomas Take. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire. They should all be in the Hall of Fame. A Hall of Fame, a baseball Hall of Fame without those guys in it is not a Hall of Fame to me. No matter what legends of the sport are in it besides them, those were the best players of that era, and the fact that they are not in the Hall of Fame, I think, is a joke. That is all on the Thomas Take tonight. Very excited to announce Deshaun Vincent will be joining me soon. He was supposed to join me tonight, but he had prior arrangements apparently. But yeah, I'm firing these out one at a time. My opinion is being put out there. You can agree with it, disagree with it. It's okay by me. As long as you're listening and tuning in, thank you. And good night.